If you're an athlete, you've heard it before. It's more than a game. But why is that? Is it because it forces you out of your comfort zone? Is it because it helps you to grow in virtue along the way? Is it because you might have big bucks and generational wealth if you make it big? Although these are true, what might be most important are the relationships formed beyond the game. So today we want to talk about how sports should be making relationships, not breaking them. We are the Varsity Catholic Podcast. Welcome back to the Varsity Catholic Podcast. I'm Brady Steer.
And I'm Ry Goody.
And I want to kick off this episode by talking about something that I think is actually a tough question. So, are you ready for my tough question?
Hit me with it. Hit me with your best shot.
What do you think is the hardest sport to be a good teammate in?
Whew, that is a hard question because, I was thinking about this question a little bit because you may or may not have hit me with it beforehand, but I was thinking about it and I don't think that you can pick a sport to be the best teammate in. Like, I don't think there is a sport that you can say, oh, this teammate is better or this is a harder sport to be a better teammate in, because I think if you're rating good teammates across the board, then they should all possess like the same qualities, and they should be able to, like, in any sport that it is, they should be living with the same like virtue, the same qualities, the same relational qualities. Like, I don't know if you can say, oh, it's harder to be a teammate in softball versus basketball, because I think you're gonna try to be the same person in other sports. Does that make sense?
It makes a lot of sense. It also sounds like you're copying out of the answer.
I thought about it, and I just don't know if there's a harder sport to be a teammate in, because all of them are going to bring different aspects to that. I will say, this might be a hot take, and I also want to hear your answer to the other question, but this might be a hot take. I think that it might be harder to be a teammate on a women's team than it is on a men's team.
I'm staying out of that territory. I don't want to do anything there.
That's where I will go, but I don't know. What are your thoughts on which sport?
From what I've heard, I would say the women probably agree with you on that. So I will just tend towards that answer. But what about the men? I will agree with you on that. The men would probably also vibe with me, because I think the guys. Here's an example. When I was coaching before I joined Varsity Catholic, I was coaching a team, and during practice one time, these two guys got in a fist fight on the basketball court. After practice, they were having fun joking around in the locker room together. Like, that would not happen, as far as I know, on a women's team. No. The guys were friends. About 45 minutes later, the girls are like, might take weeks. Yeah. I don't know. But
yeah, because here's what would happen on a women's team. You get in a fight in practice, they're not talking to each other for at least probably a month, and then the whole team divides into two, and the whole team is picking sides or talking about the other. This is, again, not a virtuous team. We're in generalization here. If that was happening on a women's team, I think that's what would happen on a women's team, is it would turn into this big snowball effect, and it would be really hard to recover in a quick amount of time like the men do.
Well, and that's why we're here, because we want to change the culture of sports so that doesn't happen, right?
Amen.
But I gotta answer the original question, because I do have a hot take on it. Okay, maybe not a hot take. I have some thoughts on it. First thought, this is kind of a cop-out answer. Some sports are more individualized. So I'm thinking like a singles tennis player, or maybe even a sprinter in track. Like, so you could argue those are the hardest to be a teammate on because you're focused on yourself. But the premise of the question is mostly like, team sports, to be an actual teammate to somebody. And my first thought was, I'm like, okay, what sports get most glory in the U.S.? I'm like, okay, basketball and football probably. So I'm like, okay, basketball, if you're a stud basketball player going for all the points, it's probably hard to be a good teammate because the sport encourages you to score points. However, then I stopped myself because I'm like, but there's also a stat that's literally called assists, where you are encouraged to pass the ball. So I'm like, okay, maybe basketball, not so much. Now I was thinking about football, and I was like, okay, football, very glorified sport. However, there are positions on the team that aren't so much glorified, namely like offensive linemen stereotypically aren't. if you're an offensive lineman on a team that is garbage, you're quite literally sacrificing your body every play to never win. And I was like, I think it would be really hard to be a good teammate on a garbage football team if I'm like an offensive lineman, just giving myself it all the time, getting beat up. And I was just like, dude, what's the point anymore? I don't even care. These guys are terrible.
True.
So there's my thought.
That was really good. And that is really interesting. Again, I think where the women and men brain, or maybe it's just my brain, but the women and men brain differ. Because when you say how, like, the hardest sport to be a good teammate, my brain automatically goes to relational. Like, just kind of like, how can I be a good teammate on and off the field? How am I supporting them? How am I loving them? How am I hyping them up? Not that yours wasn't, but yours automatically just went to the, basketball assist, or I have to lay my body down in the game. And I think that's so interesting. I don't know. I probably should have thought in the game too, but I think I was thinking all around virtue, character, how to love and be charitable to your teammates versus like your point of laying down your body to succeed in the game, but also to protect your team. That's so, I
love it. That's why we're a dynamic duo, because we cover everything here.
Yeah, this is great.
The male heart, the female heart. This is awesome. So, because that's kind of the point today.
Yeah.
Thank you. I get that a lot from my wife and everybody around me. I'm usually right. So
yeah, I'm sure that's how your conversations go at home.
But you're right, today, like, more than a game. It is more than the game. It is the relationships behind it. And you even talked about that in your answer. It's like, how can I be a good teammate? How can I lead people towards God? So we want to talk about relationships with our teammates, relationships with our coaches, relationships with our parents, relationships with God, in terms of how are those growing or shrinking while we're playing our sport, when we're growing up, as we're doing these things. So I think we start off talking about teammates, because that's kind of the question we were at, is have you had, or maybe how have you had teammates push you towards God or away from God? You can kind of take it whatever way you want, but curious your experience with how teammates have pushed you towards or away from God.
Yeah, great questions. I do believe this is such a broad question, because I think in different stages of life, you're going to have different teammates, different effects on you, right? Because when you're in youth sports, like, you're able to go home at the end of the day and you're able to like kind of separate your 2-hour practice from the rest of your life. And then maybe your friends at school are like, they have more relationship where they're bringing you closer to God. But in college, I think that was a big eye opener for me, was getting to college and you spend majority of your days and hours with your team, and you are who you surround yourself with, right? So like, what if it's not your choice to surround yourself with the people that have been picked for you to be teammates? And so I think that's kind of what I found in college, and there were some awesome teammates in college, but also it was very much a culture of not a virtuous culture, very much a culture of sin, right? When we started this podcast, we kind of talked about bringing light into the wilderness, right? Because like, I have seen a lot in my career that sports are the wilderness. It's kind of chaotic. It's kind of wild. A lot of sin. Does not mean there's light there, not light there, but it can be difficult. So I think that's what I found when I came to college, was a lot of these influences that I was around every day, the conversations we were having, the things that we were doing on the weekends, the choices that were being made weren't necessarily bringing me closer to Christ. And I think that was on my direct team. And again, that's not to say everyone involved were making those, but as a whole, that's what I was finding, was that it was pulling me further away from Christ and his church and from the virtues and the lifestyle that I wanted to live. Which is just difficult, right? Like, I know there's many of you out there right now who are in that situation. Brady and I obviously work with college athletes who are in that position, and it's really difficult and lonely to live that lifestyle. Brady, what about you? Any things that sticks out to you, or just if you resonated with my experience, or what do you got?
Yeah, I want to start by piggybacking off of yours, maybe talk about some negatives, but then talk about some positives as well. So negatively, I just think the typical party culture, locker room talk around a sports team is really hard to have good relationships with, especially if you are trying to grow in your faith. And so when I was getting to college, I wasn't really doing the extracurriculars it took to be a part of the team more fully. And because of that, I didn't feel like I was as much of a teammate as my other teammates that were doing that. And so then when it comes to practice, I, on top of that, didn't feel as close to the guys, didn't connect on the court as much as because we weren't hanging out outside of practice either, which actually in turn made me a worse teammate because I saw my teammates as competition versus having camaraderie with them. And so I was quicker to anger, really trying to take their spot. And then if I didn't, I would be upset because like this person's doing XYZ over the weekend and I'm a good person and they're still playing more than I am. It just had an unhealthy mindset where the game was more important, but I didn't have the relationship with the guys to actually be my fullest teammate, to have the fullest potential that I could as an athlete. So we weren't, in terms of the podcast, we weren't running the race together off the field, and we weren't running the race together on the field as well, too, because of that. So one thing I think that like Varsity Catholic and Focus does is we try to build the complete athlete, because if you have awesome relationships outside of the field that go deep and spiritual, you can be better teammates on the field because you really know the person and care for them more. So what I have seen in positive terms that athletes have done well and have pushed me, whenever my antennas go up whenever I see athletes doing like service work in the community, whether they're like believers or not. I'm like, they're doing good things. I'm like, okay, this person has a heart, they want to do good, and that really motivates me to be more Christ-like. Also, the guys that have just great joy, passion, fortitude through a tough season, through a tough injury, through a tough off-season workout, those always wanted me to be a better, or made me want to be a better person as well. So those things have definitely pushed me more towards God, is what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going to bring up one of your points that you mentioned of just like feeling closer if you couldn't do the stuff on the weekends with your team, because I think that's something that I kind of want to speak into, because I feel like a lot of freshmen coming in, right? I mean, we're in October now, but coming in this year, their team chooses to do things on the weekend, and they're like, well, that's the only way that I can get close to my teammates is if I go out with them, if I go do those things with them. And I think that's a really hard place to be, because you're kind of choosing between the relationship or what you think is a relationship and staying in, or like not doing that stuff with your team and maybe creating a divide there. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's exactly the story I was going through. So the balance is like, what do you do? And again, there's not going to be a silver bullet answer, but I would say to try to create a new culture. You don't need to fight against the culture or change your teammates or anything like that, but just establish who you are, who you want to be, and offer opportunities for people to do things other than maybe a sinful party culture. And again, maybe this is like step by step. So maybe, hey, let's all watch the game this weekend at my house and I'll bring food and stuff. It's like, maybe you're not doing something super holy, but like we're having fun and we don't have to worry about getting too rowdy or crazy.
Right.
And maybe eventually that can turn into, during halftime of the game, let's do a little 10-minute Bible study together or something like that in the future. But initially it's just, you don't have to have the pressure of really starting something brand new and taking your teammates and calling them out. But it's really like, let's establish a new culture on the team and see if people want to be invited to that. Because long-winded answer here, but what I always tell people is if there was somebody like me now on my teams in college, I would have jumped into that camp and that culture and want to be a part of the faith life stuff right away. But I didn't want to do it. I wasn't capable of doing it. I didn't want to be seen as not cool. But it's like, if there was a missionary that came in to establish it, I would have jumped there right away. And I know there are athletes out there right now that feel the same way. So the encouragement is to maybe you should be the one to start it or offer something, and you will have teammates that actually want it too.
Yeah. And that is so hard to do. And I mean, that leads well into kind of your last point that you were saying of the teammates that you respected or the people that you respected. I always respected the people who just lived unapologetically themselves and boldly in just who they were and what they were about and what they were chasing, and they were running that race to heaven. Like that was what they were chasing. And even I just respect people who know what they're about and know what they're going to do. And when that component is faith as well, in an environment like the college sports world or any sports world, I think I respect that so much. And I think you're 100% right that if someone takes that leap and is unafraid to live a holy, virtuous lifestyle, I would have been right on their back. Like I would have wanted to follow them wherever.
Mm-hmm. Have you ever seen the movie Greater?
No.
It's 5-10 years old. It's a football movie. It's a true story. Basically, long story short, this guy named Brandon Burlsworth, he walks on to college for football at the University of Arkansas, so D1, walks on as an offensive lineman, works hard, and eventually gets a scholarship, and eventually becomes an All-American, and eventually even gets drafted into the NFL. The tragedy of the story is he got in a car accident like 10, 11 days after he got drafted. But the moral of the story was, and a lot of the big story is, he brought a lot of his teammates to Christ because of his witness. And it wasn't the witness of, I'm a stud, I do everything right, follow me. It's a walk-on who's persevered in his sport to a point of high excellence, but he was also consistent in his faith along the way. And the people saw that he could not only push himself physically to get where he wanted to be, but he also kept himself pushed spiritually, which was attractive to his teammates, and he brought a lot of teammates to Bible study into Christ. So it's a real-life story about how your relationship with your teammates can actually affect the relationship with God.
Right. And I feel like you hear so many stories or see so many movies or things about the managers of the team who, contribute nothing athletically. You don't have to be the star of the team or the stud of the team. And they end up rallying everyone around them for whatever their cause is, And I mean, look at Tim Tebow, look at St. Paul, look at the people who just lived their life unapologetically themselves and weren't afraid to say what they were chasing and to live out the way that they were intended to live and that they were created for. And I'm so personally bad at this myself. I really struggle to do this myself. And so I think when I see other people doing that so well, I'm so inspired. And kind of talking again on the positive side, a friendship and a relationship in college that just helped me a lot and sparked me towards really a deeper conversion was my friend Jules. She was on the lacrosse team, so she wasn't necessarily a teammate of mine, but again, this is what we're talking about, the relationships outside of the sport, that it's more than a game and it's expanding. And she was just on my college campus, and this girl was getting up before her lift in the morning to go pray to the chapel. And I'm like, girl, it's 4:50 in the morning. Why are you doing that? She's like, well, I have to get my prayer in. And just in that way, she came in for 1 year. She was a transfer for 1 year at the Mount. And she just kind of changed around her whole team culture just because she came in hot. She came in I know what I'm about. I'm here to play lacrosse. I'm here to be a stud on the field, but I also am doing it for the greater glory of God. And so are you going to run this race with me? Are you going to do this on and off the field with me? And that
Jules.
Oh, dude, she gave me the courage to start a Bible study with my team and her team my last year. And we did that together. And I just was continually inspired by her and still am to this day, right? This doesn't just stay in college. It's more than a game. It's beyond the sport. We carried it into now. I just was voice memoir the other day and was just you inspire me to live greater.
Greater. Look at that. You just tied in the movie title too, right there.
Ayo. I didn't even think about that.
I know.
That's funny.
Great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. One of the other, so we're talking about teammates and stuff. A big part of the team that we might not always think about is actually we are running this race with our coaches as well. Or if you are a coach, you need to be running this race with the teammates you have, with the players you have. Sorry. So you are a coach, Ry, currently. So I want to ask you hey, as a coach, what do your relationship with your players look like? Or what do you want it to look like?
Yeah, I'm honestly still trying to figure that out because I just stepped into this high school world. I know that because I'm in the high school world now, I feel like these girls can look up to me a lot more than maybe they did in college just because of the age difference and because they haven't been to college yet, right? They haven't experienced that. So I think that's been something I've been discovering of how do I balance that well? How do I live that authentically? And I'm still figuring it out. And I just hope, again, if I live unapologetically myself and unapologetically Catholic and virtuous, that alone would give an example to these girls. But something that comes to my mind is Coach Allison. She used to be the softball coach at Alabama. She's at, is it Louisiana Tech now?
Lafayette Tech, one of those two. I think she's
Raging Cajuns, whatever that is. And I can't remember her last name. I'm terrible with names. Yes. So I went my freshman year to a talk of hers in Seek. It was either my freshman or sophomore year. And I was in the midst of just struggling to to adapt to that college lifestyle that we were talking about. And she gave this incredible talk. And I honestly can't even tell you fully what the talk was about, but I know, and I actually might have mentioned her last podcast now that I'm thinking about it, but I know that she just was a coach who lived virtue and who was Catholic and who was unapologetically herself. And that just like my heart jumped out of my like body at that talk. I was like, I would give anything to have her as my coach. And so if I could be that for one girl, for a whole team someday, that's the goal. That's the dream. Like I would love that. Just to be someone who they didn't have before.
That's incredible. She did give a talk last week as well at Salt Lake City. And so listeners, if you're on Seek Replay app, search up Coach Betts' talk. It was incredible. So I've shared it with a bunch of people. So she's awesome. Yeah. Maybe this is some recruiting for her by accident too. Get the girls to go down to play softball for her.
Oh my gosh. I would, I'd tell all my girls, go down there. I just think she's incredible. Yeah, I mean, everything I've heard.
Exactly.
Because again, it's more than being a coach. Yeah, more than a game, more than a coach. Like you're not just coaching athletics, you're coaching life, you're coaching character, you're coaching virtue. And I mean, that flows really well into parenting too. Like Brady, you're dad of one, and you have some news for the listeners.
Second one on the way, soon to be two. I mean, what does that look like as a parent? Either what kind of coach do you want your kids to have, but also what does that look like as a dad in the sport? Kind of like how do you want that relationship to be with your kids within sports? Well, talking about the what coach do I want them to have, first what I'd say is I'd echo everything you said. I want the coach that has purpose beyond the game. I know we keep saying that, but it's like I want them to teach life lessons alongside of the sport. And ideally, it would actually look a lot like how the Catholic Church is. And what I mean by that is I want them to have open communication, the ability to be vulnerable, the ability to talk about, hey, I have questions in this area, doubts in this area. But I want them ultimately, at the end of the day, to have actual respect for the actual authority that the coach has. And I want the coach to, respect the players as well. And how this ties into the church, right, is we can respect the authority that the church has because of the founder, Jesus Christ. And so it's like we can still have our questions. We can be vulnerable with our priests, with our missionaries. And I want that open communication for them. But at the end of the day, I want the actual, respect for the authority that's there. So I would say that.
I've never thought about that comparison between church and coach. But gosh, I love that. Yeah.
Hey, thank you.
Bring it on.
Food for thought.
I'm gonna bring that into my coaching perspective and my thoughts, and that's great. Yeah.
Clip it, save continue. Send it, share it.
Yeah, pray with it. Yeah. Okay.
But as a parent, I want my kid. It sounds so cliche. I want them to succeed, but I want them to also have fun, and to do it in the right way. And so that sounds very vague, but it's what I want for them. I want to be running alongside my kid, really having them enjoying their experience while growing in virtue along the way, knowing that also that here's what I'd say actually, what I'd say? I want them to enjoy it and be excellent in the process, leaving the results up to God. So I want them to be really good at understanding this is how you work hard, this is how you sacrifice, learning team camaraderie, teammate stuff, respect, all those things, having fun along the way. But also then to leave the results up to God so that their identity is being a good person with good character, not in the wins and losses they have. And what it makes me think of is, so Father John Ezrati was a former Focus national chaplain. He's awesome. Miles Christi priest. Does a lot of Ignatian spirituality stuff. He's given a number of talks, and one thing stood out to me that he said that stuck with me to this day, and I think it's true as a parent to the kid as well in terms of sports. He's talking about discernment. He goes, hey, I want to do his accent, but I'm just going to mess it up, so I'm not even sure.
Yeah, good call.
Yeah. It was tempting right there for a second. I was like, don't do it. He's talking about if something leads you closer to God, do it. If something leads you further away from God, don't do it. So similar to sports, I want the sport to be something that leads them closer to God, and so do it. And if it's leading them away from God, it could be a don't do that sport, but it could just be a, hey, let's change this aspect of sport that you're thinking about or whatever. So as simple as that for a parent, I want it to lead them closer to God in all of the ways it can.
Right. And I think a lot of that comes from conversation, I would hope. I'm not a parent, but even just thinking on the coaching side of like, I think a lot of that comes from conversation and knowing where your kid's at in the sport, knowing if they're enjoying it still, knowing, like you said, if they're like, I'm over this, then you can have that conversation. Why? Are you over it because you're failing? Well, why are you scared of failing? Or why does it matter so much that you're failing? Is it because you're placing your identity in this? Is it because you feel like if you fail in sports that you are a failure, or is it because you're just kind of tired of it? I think there's big differences there, and I think it would have been awesome to have those conversations, or to have them as a parent. But yeah, well, we've talked about relationships from teammates to just fellow athletes at the same school to parents to coaches. Is there anything we haven't covered or anything you kind of want to unlock?
The top priority of God, your relationship with God. Again, it kind of segued into it right there.
Probably do that.
Like, how is your sport actually helping you grow in your relationship with God or not? Because I think the number one thing, especially if you're talking about college athletes, and this is my own story as well, is they don't have enough time for God. And that's a big problem, because if God's the most important thing, you can spend 3 hours a day on your craft, but you can't spend 5 minutes of prayer. There's actually a big imbalance there. So it's like, okay, how can you use your sport to bring you closer to God? And I have some thoughts, but I want to open the door and see if you have any thoughts right away.
Right away, the thing that is coming to my mind is Walter Chizek, the book. I think, what is his book? Do you remember it off the top of your head?
He leadeth me?
Yes, thank you. And in it, he talks about every moment is the allowed will of God. Like, you're allowed to do something, it's the allowed will of God. And so that in every moment that you live, if every day, that is God's will for your life. And so how are you going to know him in it? How are you going to love him in it? How are you going to serve him in it? How do you take those actions? How do you take the things that you're doing and give it over to God? So for example, in sports and athletics, if you truly, truly do not have time to make an hour of prayer, if you don't have time to make 30 minutes of prayer, first I would say wake up earlier, but I can get on that topic another time because I can run a little tangent on that, because I think you can always wake up a little earlier to fit in prayer. But let's say you actually physically can't do that. Then how are you taking the moments in your day, walking over to the athletic facility, playing your sports, lifting weights, doing conditioning? How are you taking those little moments and thinking and bringing God into those moments and giving him the glory of, you're on the 50th burpee of this conditioning, and you physically, how can you go on anymore? I can go on because I'm offering this up for so-and-so for the glory of God. I'm offering this up to grow in virtue, to grow in character. Whatever it is, how are you taking those moments in everyday life to give him the glory? That's where I would start.
I love it because a very practical thing, and again, it's just to tag on to what you said, that once I heard this, I have never stopped doing it, and so I want to offer it to all of our student athletes out there as well, is every practice, every game, you should be offering it up for somebody, Amen. For a team, for a prayer attention. It could be a teammate, it can be some kid that that's leukemia on your mom's side back home or something. I don't know. Yep. But you're wasting the sacrifices that you're putting into the sport if you're not offering it up for somebody. Because it takes you out of yourself, right? Because I'm doing the sport for me, I want to be excellent. But it's like, yes, maybe I'm doing that 5th rep of 800 repeats for myself to get better conditioned. But spiritually, I'm actually like thinking about that person who has to persevere through a tough situation at home, or, the persecuted Christians in Africa right now that are going through tough stuff. It's like, I'm praying for them, and this is how I do it.
Or the teammate that you like the least, that you're really struggling with, or the coach that you're like, I cannot do another day of him or her. There's so many options.
Exactly. So many options. So it's just a practical way to pray always, because to your point, it might be hard to spend time, but it's how are you using the time in between. And the Bible talks about praying always, but you can't pray all the time if you don't pray some of the time. And so you do need to have it scheduled in to do that every day, some of the time. But to pray all the time is to think about, how can I glorify God in what I'm doing today? How can I glorify God through my practice? If somebody is a Christian, how does that person practice? How does that person play? And am I being that person that is a Christian that wants to be, but I don't act the same way on the court as I feel in my heart? And so we really need to practice doing that day in and day out. And so your sport, again, can definitely, as I've said this a million times in my work that I do, sport is it's a gift from God, but it's a very neutral thing. It can easily pull somebody away from God into greed, into lust, into fame, all those things.
Yeah.
But can also easily pull people towards God, learning how to sacrifice, being a good teammate, growing in virtue, which we'll talk about virtue a lot, these particular virtues as we go forward. But it's not about the sport itself. It's about what you do with the opportunity you're given through your sport.
Yeah, totally. I think, that's why a lot of us love sports, right? Is because there's so many things involved in one activity that it's not just about the game. It's more than a game. It develops you as a character, it develops you as a person, and it's fun. Like most of the time, it's competition. There's so much involved. I love it. And
what's that quote? If it was easy, everybody would do it.
Yeah. So, there's so many ways that sports can bring you closer to God, and hopefully, this whole podcast will be an entirety of talking about that. But especially the relationships, like you said, they can make or break them, and just keep trying to make them, not break them.
Yeah, I think some takeaways for our audience. I would want them to think about, what relationships have grown or have suffered because of sport, and then how can you run the race with your teammates, with your coaches, with your parents, and with God better moving forward, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's more than a game. We want to kind of build a legacy. If you're on a college campus, or even high school, honestly, but if you're on a college campus or a coach, make a spiritual footprint by starting up a Bible study on your team. Hang out with other Catholic athletes. Make sure you're invested into relationships that can be formed and last whenever your time of sport is done.
And then one challenge that I will leave you guys with today is, how can you live unapologetically yourself today more than you did yesterday? How can you be that light in the wilderness? How can you do one small thing to be that person that other people will find attractive, even if they don't show it right away? But how can you be that? And I'll take that away too and challenge myself with that as well.
Praise God. Let's go. Well, that's going to be a wrap for our Varsity Catholic podcast today. Check out more of what we do on Instagram at Varsity Catholic. Share this with a friend, share this with a teammate, share this with a coach, a parent, whoever. Share it with God today. I don't know how that was going to work, but make sure to make solid contact with those like, subscribe, follow buttons, so that not only can you keep up with the content we're delivering, but so that you can make Christ more and more a central part of sport. And as always, remember to compete well, finish the race, and keep the faith.